All right. Well, welcome everybody to Indiana Native Plant Society Central Chapter's presentation with our honored guest, Jared Goodykoontz. So he is here. He's owner of Jared the Nature Guy LLC, and he's here to talk to us a little bit about his Native Plant Party card game, which I'm excited personally because I bought the game and I just don't have the patience to sit down and read instructions on anything. So I'm really excited to learn. He's the game creator and he shares his talents for engaging youth and a new party game focused on faunal association. So he's going to teach us some of his tips and tricks for engaging public about native plants because that's part of the way that we solve this crisis that's going on is build our army further, get more people to join up on this revolution. So Jared is a school naturalist, author, illustrator, native plant nursery owner, and whatever else piques his interest.
Pretty
Uh,
much.
he gets to teach over 500 kiddos 2 to 6 years old every week in nature classes focused on senses tracking, bird language, and native plants. He loves creating games to teach about our natural world, just like this native plant card game. And so, yeah, he's going to teach us tonight how to play his game and some other things. And with without further ado, I'll turn things over to you, Jared.
Great. Thanks so much, Bobby. Yeah, I'm super excited to share this. So just I'll do a brief backstory. And I am outside right now. So if you hear some wind, that's what's happening. But so I came up with this game, a few years ago, because basically when COVID hit, I already was a school naturalist, but plants were kind of my blind spot. I was really into mammals, really into bees, really into just wildlife. And I had read a book called Beyond Words about animal emotions, and my brain exploded. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I was already a pre K teacher, so I needed to teach my kids about that. I thought that was amazing. So I got deep dive. You'll you'll probably pick up on this, anyone who's listening or watching, but I have ADHD, so I use my ADHD powers to deep dive into Ohio wildlife where I'm at, and was able to learn tons of stuff. Luckily, my bosses believed in me. I made a nature program, and from there it was just all animals all the time. However, 2020 hits, and I'm stuck at home. And when I'm at home, I forget exactly what it was. It may have been a Facebook group, but I found out like what a native plant even is. Like I definitely had the green wall blindness of just like there's plants outside. Like I didn't know. But having a lot of time during 2020, I learned about native plants and I thought they were cool. Oh good, those plants that belong here. That's probably good for the environment, all that stuff. However, I found Heather Holmes' Insect Interactions Guide about exactly which plants attract which pollinators. And I've always thought like hummingbirds are really cool. And I never even saw a hummingbird until I was in my 20s. And so I thought like hummingbirds are like real life fairies. And I found out there's like specific plants that are not a hummingbird feeder that you don't have to clean, that you can plant that are supposed to grow here, are relatively fuss free, and will bring hummingbirds to your house. And I was like, what? And then I got to see that happen with some cardinal flower and some jewelweed. And I was like, this is amazing. And again, ADHD, I deep dove into this insect interactions guide, learned all about, what plants make who come. And then I was like, oh my goodness, like this is a game. And I grew up loving Pokemon and, all the animal monster games and all that stuff. And I was like, we could totally make a game because I was still a teacher in the classroom. And I know 100% like kids learn, even adults learn through stories and hands on. Unfortunately, like PowerPoints typically don't cut it very well, which is why I don't even have a PowerPoint tonight. You just get to look at my face. So because of that, I wanted to share, and I found out, just the amazingness that everyone listening to this knows that native plants like literally save the world and are the keystone to everything. And but I thought I've got to teach the kids about this in a way that's actually exciting. And that's when the pollinator party came up, because I was like, kids love parties. And so if you plant a native plant, it's basically a party invitation. Because if you plant a purple coneflower, like, you will get to see bumblebees, and later on, you'll definitely get to see goldfinches, let alone anybody else on there. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like, kids are naturally drawn to animals. People are naturally drawn to animals. So if you can like guarantee them a way to bring wildlife close for them to see, like, people are like, oh, because if people hear the environmental stuff of like, it's good for the environment to plant native plants, most people are like, yeah, and use reusable straws and stuff. Like, we've heard all that stuff. But when you're like, hey, do you want to see a hummingbird outside your house all the time with something that you never have to clean? People are like, I'm listening. Okay. So I made the game. Um, so with that, yeah, I mean, the idea is super simple. Native plants equal party invitation. Invasive plants equal not. Um, and so the whole goal was that this game can be used in large groups. Because at first, me and my business partner Brian, we tried to sell this game as small actual cards, like almost like Pokemon cards, and just didn't sell super well. And my main goal is to just help people get other kids and anybody, adults, excited about native plants. So I just want to give it away. So I don't even care about like selling it now. And so like, I have made it a large format now where you can just print it for free and laminate it. And I was just telling Bobby, I recently used this at an elementary school for 300 kids using a large laminated version of the game, which we'll play here in a minute. And by the end of a 45-minute program, every kid and teacher in that gymnasium knew what native plants were excited about them, were chanting for them. And then they decided to plant a 235 native plant garden that they're going to use as a learning garden this year. They actually then acted based off their excitement from this game. Which that's the actual goal of the game too. It's not just education, but to actually get people to plant real plants in the ground. You can learn about them, but let's plant some stuff. So yeah, and there's kind of a caveat of that, of like, a lot of people have asked me, what do you do, or what do you say about bees? Because a lot of people are like, they're going to attract bees. Like, I don't want that. And so like, so I teach weekly classes, and I tell all of my 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4 or 5, all the way up teachers, like, bumblebees and honeybees are pretty much only going to sting if you grab them or try to hurt them. And if they're on a flower, they're busy. They're getting their food. And then if I'm in a small group, I'll even offer to go like see the bees with them. And I tell the kids, like, you can do 2 things with bees. You can say hi to a bee, or if you don't want to see the bee, you say bye and you move your body away from the bee. And most of the kids get it right away. The adults take a little longer, but the kids get it right away. And for schools, when I've had some schools push back, like, oh, I don't know if we can plant a native garden, I usually find somewhere that's not right by the entrance, and then say, like, we could plant one here, and the bees that it is going to attract are going to get a drink, and they're going to leave. And usually it's mostly yellow jackets who are giving all the other bees a bad name anyway, because we talk about beneficial wasps in the game, and I talk about how they're not really interested in you. But like, the long story short is basically just telling them, like, the bees are busy, they're getting drinks, then they've got stuff to do, and they're really only going to sting you if you're trying to hurt them. And most people like understand that. But then, so going forward, like, how to actually like use this game. So I made it really easy. Like, it's a card game, but there's no hands. You're not strategically trying to hold a card for later, like in a big hand. You're not keeping track. And then honestly, for group settings, it's cooperative. You're not even like competing. The goal is to invite as many pollinators at the end of it as you can, and then like everybody wins, because everything's connected. So then everybody wins. And that's worked really well for me for assemblies and in classrooms and garden groups. And I've done this for people who are 4, all the way up to garden clubs of 60, 70 plus, and everybody had a great time. I've done it with groups of 4 people, and I've done it in corporate trainings for 100 people. I've done it for elementary schools with 300 people. Like, it works. So let's get into it. The whole game can be played in 10 minutes or less. So you don't need to feel like you have to dedicate a ton of time to this. So the first thing is when you download it for free, and I gave Bobby the link, so there'll be a way for you to download it. It's just on my Google Drive. But the first thing you're going to see is there are house cards. And these house cards, you're going to take these and just set it on the ground, put it up on the board. There's nothing super special about this card. It's just representing the house and kind of grounds what you're doing. So what you're going to do is you're going to put this house somewhere on the ground, on the board, and you're going to tell people, this is our house. And our house has, a small suburban garden, and we have room for 5 plants. Now, the rest of the deck is just shuffled into a pile. These are the laminated big card version. And you say, we're just going to go around the room, and people can just pick the top card. Now, I usually stack the deck because there's specific things I want to cover. However, you can do it the way you want. I'll kind of show you the way I do it. But I usually have a native plant on top. So immediately like, oh, you picked a green card. The first person, great. For example, this is native switchgrass. And so I'll say, wow, look at this. A native grass, bees? And I'll briefly explain yeah, bees nest in bunch grasses. And if you plant this switchgrass, you're going to get caterpillars eating the switchgrass, and you're going to get goldfinches eating the seeds. So this brings 3 animals to our party. And you'll see the pictures have little hats on. It's very silly. But then every card also gives a kind of description of the plant. So anyway, we'll say, all right, should we plant this in our 5-spot garden? And if I'm doing it with kids, they'll all be like, yeah. If I'm doing it with adults, they're like, I guess. So we take it and we plant it. Again, either stick it on the board, stick it up with magnets, put it on the floor, however. If I'm doing it with kids, I'll then invite them to be these pollinators. I'll be like, all right, we need a goldfinch. Who wants to fly around the switchgrass card? And they love it. And I'll tell them goldfinches say potato chip. And they just think that's hysterical. They fly around the card saying potato chip. I'm saying, who wants to be a caterpillar? One kid's just scooching on his belly. I say, who wants to be the bumblebee? A kid's buzzing around. Then, of course, I take that moment to say, hey, bumblebees only sting if we try to squish them. So whoever's being a bumblebee, we're not going to sting anybody. And then they do that. And we have, one little card up or on the floor, and we have kids buzzing around it, and they're having a good time. If I do adults, I usually just point to the 3. This brings 3 animals already to your yard with this one plant. I hang it up, but then we just move on. Most adults don't want to crawl on their belly like a caterpillar. So we plant that, and then I have the next person go. Usually I'll do 1 or 2 native plants. I usually try to get a pretty one in there. So the next card in our pile, New England aster. Whoa. And then I say, look at all those pollinators. We've got bumblebees, solitary bees. I usually take that moment to explain that. Did you know there's hundreds of different kinds of bees? Red, blue, green, shiny. Usually people are like, what? And I say, butterflies and moths, caterpillars, goldfinch, little shiny beetles, predatory wasps. I'll take a moment to explain, wasps are actually good guys. A lot of wasps eat the pests in our garden. Most wasps don't care about you and want to get a drink and go do their business. And they're not looking to sting you in the eyeball. I say eyeball to the kids, and they all laugh, and we all have a good time. But so yeah, I usually do a pretty one next, and there's a bunch of different examples in here. And I say, should we plant this? And of course, they're all like, yeah. So we plant this. And if it's kids, and they're all the pollinators, and I'm like, look how big our party is. 8 plus 3 with our switchgrass and New England aster. We have 11 animals at our party. It's amazing. And then I'll usually use that, depending on the age. I don't really cover invasive species with 4-year-olds. I want them to love nature before I ask them to save it. But as far as for adults, I'll be like, all right, somebody else choose the next card. Oh, invasive honeysuckle. And then I'll usually, if it's an adult, I'll give them a hard time. Like, how could you? And then I say, so this plant says you have to plant it. You don't have a choice. So it takes up one of your 5 spots, and no pollinators on here. Now, I know technically, scientifically, invasive plants can support limited amounts of wildlife. I just make it black and white for this game's purpose and say, oh man, we're not helping any pollinators. And if we want to even go further, when birds eat honeysuckle berries, it actually hurts them. oh man. And the kids are like, we don't want to plant it. And it's like, well, we have to. It's invasive. It planted itself. And they're all, oh man. Everyone's upset. And you'll see at the bottom of the card, it actually gives native suggestions of what you could plant instead. So we have to plant it. It's there. Nobody gets to buzz around it. Everyone's sad. So then the next person draws a card. And again, there's no hands. There's no decks. Like there is a deck, but basically it's just pick the top card and you're just going around the room. We'll do a few more native plants, great blue lobelia, that takes another one of our spots. Cardinal flower doesn't attract cardinals, but it does attract hummingbirds. And I'll talk about how, native red plants bring hummingbirds, but unlike sugar cleaners that have to be cleaned every day, otherwise you're poisoning hummingbirds, you never have to clean a cardinal flower. So I'll kind of bring that up. And then at that point, we have 5 plants. Our party's full. We'll draw another card, and I'll usually make sure it's something awesome like a downy sunflower. And people are like, what? A native perennial sunflower? That's kind of blue and soft to the touch? Amazing. And, I love them so much, I have one on my head. And then I'll be like, oh, we're out of spots. That honeysuckle's taking up our 5th spot. There's the dogs I was talking about. So, yes, I have 3 dogs, and there they are. But I'll say, I wish we could plant this, but the honeysuckle's taking up our spot. I guess we'll just put this down. And everyone's like, oh, usually the kids, some kids get really into it. They're really upset. The adults are like, oh man, I didn't even know we have perennial sunflowers. And so we'll draw. Sometimes if I really want to hammer it home, like the next card we'll draw is the deer. And they eat one of our native plants that doesn't have the no deer sign on it. So for example, out of those cards we were just choosing, New England aster, not deer resistant, eaten, and we discard that card. And now the kids or the adults are like, come on. But then someone gets to be the hero, invasive plant removal. And they get to get rid of like depending on how I've stacked the deck, sometimes it'll literally be 4 invasive plants because like English ivy's in here, turf grass is in here, Bradford pears are in here. So there's been times where I've stacked the deck and it's 4 invasives and we have like one little cardinal flower, and everyone's like, what is the point? And then we get this, we clear out all the stuff. I did this at the 300 kid elementary school. The kid who drew the invasive plant removal, I'm not kidding, they cheered for him like a professional athlete. Like the kids went nuts and were like, yeah! Like they would have probably crowd surfed him if they could have. But they got to throw away 4 invasive plants, and then I made sure the next 4 plants are like, boom, downy sunflower, boom, showy goldenrod or stiff goldenrod. And we talk about for briefly, doesn't cause allergies. That's not actually true. Boom, purple coneflower. And a lot of kids or grown-ups will be like, oh, we know that one. And we'll fill it up with natives. And then, if we're doing the kids, we've got 40 kids buzzing around up there and everyone's like, look at the party. And, if we're doing it with adults, they're like, oh my goodness. And for adults, I'll usually emphasize like you could have a magical little spot that your kids could go out and sit and like just be surrounded by butterflies. Like that's a real thing that could happen. Or like, so I own a native nursery, and this year I did planned garden kits, and I had a donut kit where you plant native plants in a donut with a paver stone in the middle, and your kids can sit on the paver stone and be surrounded by magic. And like the parents have like gotten back to me and like, it's been amazing. So I usually emphasize that a lot if I'm doing an adult or a corporate training. It's just like you can create magic for your kids like right in your backyard, and you don't even have to go to the zoo. And so yeah, it's really straightforward, and you can kind of pull the plug on the game whenever you want. Depending on how much you want to like get into lessons. Like there are other cards you'll notice when you download it. Like there is a pesticide card, which has the honor of having made my daughter cry the first time we played this, because the pesticide card means all the kids who are being pollinators have to go sit back down, and they were very sad. The bot version that I first made actually came with little pollinator tokens, and so like if you did the pesticide card, you had to like put all your tokens away, and that's what made my 8-year-old cry. She was okay. She learned a very valuable lesson. But so if you want to get into that, I usually don't get into that too much with like the littles. And then I have some non-native, non-invasives in there, like a taxus bush, which I like to point out is one of the most toxic plants on earth. For example, my grandpa's horses ate one branch off of a taxus bush and they were both dropped dead the next day. So I like to point out, like, why do we plant one of the most toxic plants on earth around all of our houses? This is silly. So like those plants are gray for the cards, and it says on the plant like you can choose to plant it and take up one of your spots or chuck it. And the kids are always like, chuck it. And I literally throw it behind me and the kids cheer. It's a whole thing. Um, but so there's different options you'll notice when you download. Like you can kind of make this game as simple and straightforward as get rid of invasives, plant some natives, yay. Or you can add in some of the more nuanced lessons about pesticides and non-invasive, non-native plants. I always like to end with my favorite plant. You can end it how you want, but I always like to end with clustered mountain mint. And this plant has ×2 on all the pollinators because I have a big clustered mountain mint right behind me. But clustered mountain mint, I actually started with 2 plants, and I've been able over the last 5 years to propagate them into over 60 plants around my property. Um, but anyway, I like to point out that like you will never see more native bees, wasps, and beetles than when you plant one of these, a cluster mountain mint. And so at the end of the game, especially if I'm with kids, I'll plant this, and then everybody gets to get up and buzz around, and it's super fun. And then if I'm doing with adults, I like to point out that like this is tea. Like I have this in my coffee, which is actually a secret to my energy level you're seeing right now. But I have clustered mountain mint in my coffee most days, and Native Americans use it. And when I do with kids, I like to point out that Native Americans are humans who still exist. So Native Americans use it, current tense, for energy, and I use it for energy, and it works. So I like to point out some side things with that. But yeah, that's kind of the just how you play it. It's really as simple as pick a card, decide to plant it or not, give like a 10-second talk about that plant and move on. You can play the whole game. I mean, I think we just did it in about 15 minutes with some extra explanation. But yeah, you can play the whole game, like I said, in a large group setting, especially if you're moving fast in like 10, 15 minutes. And then you can lengthen it as much as you want as far as explaining different plants or, which plants are personally exciting to you. I told Bobby at the beginning of this, I made this entire game on MS Paint, like on just that free paint program that comes with Windows laptops. Like, I don't know how to do Photoshop. I don't know how to do that stuff. The reason I say that is because it's really easy to make these cards. Like if you want to use this in an educational setting, if you want to use this and like use the specific plants that might be in a learning garden at a school. Oh, there goes the wind. It blew our pesticides. I guess that's good. But you can easily make these cards. I mean, it's just green. There's an open space for a picture of the plant, open space for the pollinators, some words at the bottom explaining what the plant is. Like really straightforward. And I might honestly, now that I say that, I might even just throw the template I used in the downloadable file after I get off here so that you can just copy and paste stuff. But yeah, I think that Bobby, did that sound clear as far as how to play?
Yes, and I love the idea of making a bigger version and making it a crowd in participation as
Yeah.
and I think that can really reach a lot. And I'm going to challenge you. I see your mountain mint, and I raise you with a plant that only crazy people plant in landscaping, and that is dog bane. But I swear that dog bane brings more to the table to feed than any in my garden. So, but you do
No, I
have
can see what
to
you're
call
saying.
it. It
Oh,
likes
I
to
see what you're
spread
saying.
aggressively. So,
It is the craziest thing is every habitat is unique. So I live on 6 acres here in central Ohio, and I have tried to grow dogbane for 4 years, and I can't get it to stay on my property. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I have modeling clay as soil, so I don't know if that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, when I've seen dogbane like in the prairies at some of the parks around here, definitely a big pollinator party going on. And I love those rainbow dogbane beetles. They're so cool.
yeah, that's
Um,
my favorite part too.
Yes, I love that. But yeah, and I was telling Bobby earlier, but like, this is cooperative, and I found like that's the best way to do it. And I like to explain like when I'm doing kids, or even like if I'm doing a group of adults for like a corporate training or whatever. I like to explain that like, we're gonna win by having the biggest party we can, and if we win by having a pollinator party, the whole earth wins. Everyone wins. So I don't make it a competitive thing. When I first made the game, it was competitive. But then I was like, honestly, this works way better. It's just a big group cooperative game. And it really has. And like I said, I've been able to take it everywhere and it's been awesome. Um, so as far as where anyone listening to this can get the game, so I gave a link to Bobby as far as downloading it just from my Google Drive, totally free. And then it's the 8.5 by 11. Just print these off, laminate them, and then you are good to go. I've had this set for years, been using it everywhere. But yeah, so that's the best place you can get it. It's just download it off there. And then, like I said, there's a template, and maybe you can make a bunch of your own. And if you would want to share what you make back with me, that'd be awesome. I think it was in the bio, but you can find me at Jared the Nature Guy, Jared, the Nature Guy, all squished together, on Instagram. And you can send me stuff there or share with me what you're doing. I'd love to hear if you use this game like in a garden club or a corporation or classroom or anywhere. Like, it fills me with so much joy to just like be able to help people get excited about native plants. So if you want to tell me about how you did it, like, I would love to hear how the game worked for you. I would add really quick as well that there's a book that goes with it. So called Pollinator Party. I wrote it, but I guess I should have said this about the game. The reason I was encouraged by this native plant party idea is I actually went straight to Doug Tallamy and talked to him about it, and he loved it. And he told me that sounds like a great idea. And the illustrator of this book is actually his colleague, Kimberly Shropshire, who does a lot of the research on the insect interactions with Doug Tallamy at the University of Delaware. And so, yeah, so story by me, illustrated by Kimberly. You can find this on Amazon, Pollinator Party. But it basically is a story of two gnomes doing the same thing as the game. And the one gnome plants, here's Cluster Mountain Mint, and they get to see all the different pollinators who comes to his yard, just with everyone he gets to meet. So that's something if you're doing a classroom or whatever, you can include that. I think that covers how to use the game and some kind of tips and tricks. I guess I would ask Bobby, is there any areas before we open up for questions that you could think of might need clarity?
I do want to point out to everybody that the link is in the chat for the Google Drive with all the files if you want to print that for yourself at home. And if you also want the professional, and I'll hold up, I did buy the game myself. I bought 2 copies to use because I just thought it looked great to use at home. So you can Google Jared, the Nature Guy. It'll go to his website and you can order from there as well, right?
Yeah, the organization that like made the game or like produced the game is called Nature Dads. So if you look up Nature Dads, like that'll take you there too.
Awesome. And then I am definitely interested in your book. So I'll have to, you said it's on Amazon. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to make for sure. And Kimberly is an amazing illustrator. Like, she's not just a scientist, she also is like incredibly talented painter. So the illustrations are like really cool. For sure.
Here's some of those pollinator tokens that he was talking about.
Oh yes, yep. All little bumblebees. Those are my favorite. I love bumblebees. They're my favorite critter.
Now I think I'll open it up to any questions, and feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question for Jared, and then you can ask directly, or if you're feeling shy, you can put your question in the chat, and I'll go ahead and read it to him. So either way, we'll open it up. Excellent. And I agree that jewelweed and cardinal flower is great for hummingbirds. That's how I get mine to the yard. And trumpet vine, if you're somebody who's willing to put up with trumpet vine going everywhere.
I planted trumpet vine way out there.
That's the secret. Yes. You have to keep on top of it, or it will be a bigger part of your garden than you anticipated. But the hummingbirds sure do like it. So.
Oh, absolutely. I found a lot of really good beneficial wasps love it too.
Okay, so KW says Can you share the link again? I don't see it in the chat. Okay, I will absolutely paste it again. There you go.
Oh, I see it. Yep. Perfect.
Are you seeing it, KW? All right. We've got it. Yay. All right. Anybody else? Let's see. Anybody else have a question for Jared? I think we're all very excited to be outside.
Yes.
Maybe. I know if I finish early enough, I'm going to probably go out and play in the garden a little bit, as we all should, instead of being in front of computer screens. But
Oh, absolutely. And I'm totally open to people sending me messages later on if you have questions or you end up using the game and get stuck with something like I mean, can I just give my email or as far as for people to contact me? What do you think, Bobby? What would be the
yeah,
best?
well, either that or if you want to reach out to Central Chapter's email, everybody should have that. I can push that out as well. Avery has a question. She would like to know, have you tried this game with teenagers? How did they react?
Yeah, so I have played this game large groups with younger elementary and beginning middle school and adult groups. Teenagers, I've only had the privilege of sharing it with teenagers who are already in an environmental club. So the teenagers who were in an environmental club are probably a little biased towards being excited about the game. So I would just say that as far as like I believe it could work if you I always tell people that like working with kids, teenagers, any age kids, like as much as knowledge is important, like showmanship is also important. So like I believe with the right showmanship, you could totally play this game with teenagers. I just haven't personally played it with teenagers who weren't already in an environmental club.
You might have to make it competitive then to get teenagers
Maybe.
involved.
Yeah,
Um,
competitive version's really easy to do it with as it exists. You don't need any other materials. All you do is each person has their own house, and whoever has the most pollinators at their party at the end wins, and you just take turns drawing cards.
I went ahead and put in the chat for everybody to see the link if you wanted to buy the game actually printed as a game. I put the naturedads.com there, and when you pull up the website, it actually will have the little tab that you click on for Native Plant Party. So you can see that.
Perfect.
Well, I don't see any other. Oh, we've got Kristen's wanting to ask a question. All right, Kristen.
My son Theo here, he is 10 and he wanted to, it's not a question, but he wanted to make a comment. By the way, my 10-year-old and my 8-year-old daughter have both been listening. And she doesn't need to come in. Anyway, he wanted to comment. Theo, why don't
Yeah, what's up, man?
So I was just gonna say that I've been listening, and I think this is a really good idea.
Oh, well, thank you.
It sounds really fun.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And
That's
by the
awesome.
way, I'm a naturalist with Indy Parks here in Indy. So my kids are exposed to all kinds of fun stuff with all the native plants we have in our yard. But yeah, this sounds really cool. So I might try it at home first on them and then bring it to future programs. So thank you for sharing.
Kudos.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Theo. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, if that doesn't fill your heart with joy, right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Out of the mouths of babes. So that's really awesome. That's really awesome to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Honestly, I'm almost more feel even more proud that I got a compliment from Theo than an adult almost.
Anybody else out there on our Zoom talk has a question or would like to say hello to Jared? I think everybody's quiet tonight. So, well, Jared, thank you so much again. And before we get off, I do want to make sure everybody knows that we have another Zoom talk. I don't know how I did this, but our July talk is at the end of July, and our August talk is at the beginning of August. So, so next week we actually have a Zoom talk, everybody, on how to prune trees, native trees specifically. They're going to address some things about native trees that can be challenging. But our speaker, actually, he's going to teach us with so much detail that the talk will be worth continuing education credits for those who are arborists. So we're going to learn a lot next week. And of course, that's free. Just go to our Eventbrite page, get and register yourself. And you can do that by following us. Just enter on Eventbrite, Indiana Native Plant Society, and it'll come up with our page, and you can follow us and look at all of our events. And with that, I hope I see everybody on Tuesday when we talk about pruning trees. So with that, thank you so much, Jared.